Okay, I want to give you 5 key takeaways from the Senate Judiciary report on the Department of Justice's involvement in the big lie and the attempt to destroy this republic. Now, the further this investigation goes, and the more of the testimony that is revealed about what these witnesses are saying, people who were there at the creation of this monstrous plot to overturn the will of the people, the more, to me, it seems like the worst possible thing that could happen in this republic. I mean, worse than a cataclysmic earthquake somewhere, or a tsunami, or a real bad hurricane. I'm not talking about individual death and destruction. I'm talking about what these bastards planned with this filthy son of a bitch Donald Trump at the top of the garbage heap was a full deconstruction of this democratic republic. And in doing so, they would deny us, our legislators, not the Christian fascists, the real ones, a chance to fulfill what the Constitution claimed this republic was going to be. They wanted to take it all away. The report from the Senate Judiciary Democrats, this preliminary report was released yesterday. And it gets into detail about the Orange Vomit's efforts to get the Department of Justice to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Think about that for a minute. Get the Department of Justice to commit what would have been the most criminal act ever perpetrated against the United States of America. And who was behind it? This filthy, subhuman pig, Donald Trump. And the report that the Democrats have released provides a level of detail that is pretty stunning, and it describes how Trump deputized a senior Department of Justice appointee, this hapless little prick named Jeffrey Clark. This was Trump's campaign to use the Department of Justice as a weapon to overturn the election. Now, I have some help in this with Josh Kovensky, who put together these 5 takeaways for Talking Points memo. And of course, credit to Josh for doing this. But the report that was released by the Senate Democrat, the Judiciary Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, also details how the former Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue and Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen prevented the scheme from being realized, which ended in an 11th hour meeting in the Oval Office. Now, let me digress just for a moment, because Rachel Maddow made an incredibly salient point last night. There are no heroes here. I mean, that sentence, how Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue, Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen prevented the scheme from being realized. Ho, 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 wait. Those 2 miserable fuckers were involved in trying to figure out a way to help the scheme work until the last minute. At no time did any of these people stand up on their hind legs, act like men who were being faithful to their oath of office and say, what the fuck are you doing? And here's my resignation, and walk out. Oh, I know all the talk about that we would have resigned. Why didn't you? Even talking about it. If you talk about robbing a bank, you're going to be held guilty for conspiring to rob a bank if someone finds out. Here are the 5 takeaways. The so-called Attorney General, William Barr, is responsible for setting the stage for everything that happened. That worthless blob. None of the Orange Vomit's efforts to hijack the Department of Justice and twist it into supporting his big lie could have taken place without Barr. It just couldn't have happened. And as the report notes, from the Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats, it was Barr who cleared the way for federal prosecutors to become involved in the first place by issuing that memo in November 2020. That memo lifted a long-standing ban which prevented prosecutors from taking overt investigative steps before election results were settled. All of the, if you remember, and it goes far beyond that, Trump was talking about if he lost the election, it would be because the Democrats had defrauded the American people. He was talking about that, what, a year or two before the 2020 election. But the report shows how the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District here in Georgia was a key battleground in this whole bunch of shit. This guy, his name is B.J. Pack. It put him in a very tough position. Pack was forced to investigate these bullshit claims involving what Barr said was vote stuffing and suitcases full of ballots. Remember that? Back in December of 2020. And it wasn't enough for Trump, for the orange vomit, because there was nothing to investigate. And that resulted in B.J. Pack's forced resignation. Remember, at the time, nobody could figure out, especially here in Georgia, well, why did B.J. Pack, appointed by the Trump administration, why is he resigning after the election? What is going on? Speculate. And investigators leave another Barr-related question open. He announced his resignation on December 14th, but he stuck around for another 9 days. And during that period, Rosen and Donahue began to face pressure from Trump, which would later turn into the bid to install Jeffrey Clark as Attorney General. Now, let us remember that Jeffrey Clark had as much experience in being Attorney General as I do, i.e., nothing, which is the reason they wanted to put him in there. Number 2, Trump brought in a whole group of maniacs to pressure Department of Justice leaders. Trump opened the floodgates for a series of random people, some with official positions at various levels of government, others without, to begin pressuring Rosen and Donahue to investigate bullshit claims that were based in nothing but, well, bullshit. In one instance, on December 27th, Trump asked Donahue for his cell phone number so he could have this Christian fascist Congressman, Representative Scott Perry, call Donahue and demand that the Department of Justice investigate, quote, things going on in Pennsylvania. I'm not going to try to comment on this because it's just too bizarre. Another episode, and again, thanks to Talking Points Memo for all this, another episode saw a man named Kurt Olson, a private attorney who had formerly worked with the Texas indicted Attorney General Ken Paxton on his Pennsylvania Supreme Court lawsuit to try to convince the Department of Justice to file a case with the Supreme Court seeking to block swing states from sending their Biden electors to Congress. Remember that? The state of Texas decided they were going to file a lawsuit which had absolutely no standing, no way to do it, which shows you the utter ignorance of these bastards. Their law degrees be damned. They were going to try to say that the 5 swing states that voted for Biden, that the Trump scum were convinced should have gone to them, they're going to try to have all those votes thrown to the gutter. Millions of people just thrown to the gutter. Now, of course, that was turned down, but not before Jeffrey Rosen made the crucial error of answering a call on his Department of Justice cell phone from a number he didn't recognize. Here is a quote from the Senate Judiciary Democrats. Quote, Rosen recalled being annoyed at himself for answering once he realized it was Olson, who asked whether Rosen had seen the Pennsylvania brief and stressed the importance of filing it. Rosen asked Olson what his relationship to Trump was, and Rosen expressed skepticism that there would be standing to bring this lawsuit to begin with. And he recalled the phone call ending with a polite brush-off, end quote. Number 3, Jeffrey Clark's coup attempt was unbelievably bullish and ham-fisted, like, you're going to do this, or I'll know the reason why. That kind of crap. The specific acts that Jeffrey Clark took during the final days of December and the first days of January, right before the attack on the Capitol, came off as very aggressive. He was trying to issue orders to his boss, Jeffrey Rosen, and why will come clear in a moment, and would eventually demand that Jeffrey Rosen resign, and then told Jeffrey Rosen that he, Jeffrey Clark, would replace him. This nobody, this nothing, this half-witted moron out of the civil division of the Justice Department, which under Trump, let's keep in mind what the civil division under Trump was all about. It was all about nothing. It was about sitting there on your ass and doing nothing. And this little cretin, this little Jeffrey Clark, he says to Jeff Rosen, I'm going to replace you. and you got to follow what I'm telling you to do right now. And eventually I'm going to replace you anyway, because they promised to make me Attorney General. Clark also threw his weight around in various other ways. He demanded that the acting on his title be removed, even though he was never confirmed by the Senate. Oh, that's just a shithole formality. Who cares about being confirmed by the Senate, right? To serve as Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Division. These people don't believe in confirmations. I mean, it is what it is because we say it is what it is. So when it came time for him to fire Jeffrey Rosen, Clark told Rosen that he would appreciate it if he stuck around as his Deputy Attorney General. In other words, Clark told his boss, hey, let's change positions. And why did he do that? Well, I would guess is because Jeffrey Clark is an ignorant little prick who wouldn't know how to open the bathroom door in the Justice Department, much less run the Justice Department. So if Rosen was there, he could rely on Rosen's expertise, you think? Rosen said, quote, there was no universe I could imagine in which that would ever happen, end quote. Number 4, the Department of Justice's rank and file would have been hollowed out before staff let Clark become Attorney General. All of those people, as Rachel pointed out last night, all of the people, the hundreds of attorneys who worked in the Justice Department, up to and including the various attorneys general around the country, the federal attorneys around the country, all of them en masse would have resigned if this little prick, Jeffrey Clark, would have been made Attorney General. Clark would have been Attorney General if this plot had gone through, but there would have been no leadership, no senior leadership. He would be taking over an empty department. On a call before the January 3rd meeting in the Oval Office, Rosen and Donahue were purportedly told by senior Department of Justice leaders, that means the heads of divisions in the department, that they too would resign if Rosen were fired. So at the meeting with Trump on January 3rd, keep the date in mind, January 3rd, Pat Cipollone, who at the time was the Orange Vomit's White House counsel, and his deputy, Patrick Philbin, told Trump, do you realize what's going to happen here if you continue to try to pressure this, to push this idea? Donahue told Trump that U.S. attorneys and other Department of Justice officials would hit the door in the event of a Jeffrey Clark being made Attorney General. They would all leave. And number 5, Trump is very impressionable. That may not be breaking news, but one overall takeaway from all of this and other accounts is that people around Trump understood that he could be moved away from seemingly disastrous courses of action when necessary. All they had to do was distract him, compliment him, tell him he was the greatest thing since caps on soda bottles. Look at the encounter with Jeffrey Clark, which alarms Rosen and other senior officials. But when Clark says that the plan is actually finally in motion, Trump will fire Rosen and appoint Clark as Attorney General. Rosen immediately knows what to do. He schedules a meeting with the orange vomit. And in this case, Trump couldn't look Rosen in the eye and say, "You're fired." He doesn't do that. Rather, and this is the way Rosen tells it, Trump started off the meeting by remarking, quote, "One thing we know is you, Rosen, aren't going to do anything to overturn the election," end quote. So Trump made the factual statement that he knew Rosen was not going to be involved in this conspiracy to destroy this republic. And from that, those around Trump and at the meeting were able to spend the next few hours pressuring the orange vomit into keeping Rosen and dropping the plan that involved Jeffrey Clark. And according to people who were there, they actually got to the point where they were browbeating the orange vomit, saying that, quote, U.S. attorneys and other Department of Justice official will resign. It took time, but it worked. And Trump dropped the plan, and Jeffrey Clark snuck out the back door of the Department of Justice just before the Biden administration arrived. Now, again, we're going to get all sorts of versions of what happened, but I think the one thread that holds true through all of this is that Trump and Barr, before he left, had this plan worked out. I mean, when you consider the details here of how many people they had to rope into this plot to overthrow democracy in this country. This did not come strictly out of the mind of this orange vomitous prick, Donald Trump, although he was at the top of the heap. Donald Trump's whining plea to everybody was, "No, I want to be president. I'm going to stay president. This was stolen from me. Nobody, the American people. I got 72 million votes. That's more votes than any Republican presidential candidate has ever gotten." Yeah, that's true, but your opponent got 8 million more. Oh, God. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.